Thank you for stopping by Ballistic Barbecue. Today we are going to have a little discussion about meat glue, and in the process I am going to make a Frankensteak. Let's get going. All right, before we start, I need to tell you I am in no way an advocate of meat glue, also known as transglutaminase. But I think we all need to have a kind of a conversation, and we need to know what we're eating and, more importantly, what our kids are eating. And that's where meat glue comes in. Basically, it is a naturally occurring enzyme. It's found in blood, and it's usually derived from either pork blood or beef blood. And I think they're also making it out of fermented bacteria. Sounds yummy. And it's basically a clotting agent, and they're using it in formed meats. So if you're eating that sandwich, it looks like a rib, it's got it in it. Your kids are eating chicken nuggets, it's got it in it. And I also suspect that a very large roast beef sandwich chain in the United States here is using it, because if you hold up a thin slice of meat out of one of those sandwiches, you know some very unnatural grains, and also I've even seen air bubbles, so it's in it. Now, the reason I'm making this video is because there's a lot of deception out there regarding this stuff. If you go into a grocery store, you'll see packages of meat, chickens that look like dinosaurs, and it says formed meat. I think anybody will assume that there's something in there holding the meat together. Where I have a huge problem, however, are there are dining halls and even restaurants that are fabricating like filet mignons using scraps of meat, and they're not disclosing this to the consumer. And their logic is, well, it's not really an ingredient, it's a process. Another problem, I think, is they get the stuff from, pork or beef blood. Well, there may be a fake filet mignon out there being eaten by a person maybe who's Jewish or Muslim who's not supposed to be eating pork products. So again, I think there's issues here. What I have decided to do is make fake ribeye steaks. I've seen a lot of fake filet mignon videos out there, but I want to try to make a ribeye, and I just want to see how deceptive we can get using this stuff. And again, I am not an advocate of this. When you're hovering around that thumbs up, thumb down video, I'm hoping you'll make your judgment based on whether or not you thought this video was informative and interesting, not based on what your feeling about this stuff is. Because again, not a fan. So let's get going. What I have here is a beef brisket, and I selected a beef brisket because of that big fat cap. And I have here some very inexpensive stew meat chopped up. We're going to use all this meat to make a kind of a small rib roast without the rib. And then we're going to ultimately slice it into some fake ribeye, some Frankensteaks. So let's get going. All right, the first thing I want to do is remove the fat cap. There we go. The next thing we're going to do is dice up this brisket into some small pieces. Now, brisket's normally a fairly tough, well, it's a tough piece of meat, but cutting it into these little small pieces, once it's a fake steak, I think it's going to be fairly tender. So let's get going on that. Okay, and here's the meat glue. I basically put it in a little shaker. It's white powder. You can also mix it with water to make a slurry, which I've done here. I'm going to use both techniques. First thing I'm going to do is lay down that fat cap, and I'm going to brush some of this meat glue slurry on the fat cap. Here's that meat. This is the brisket meat mixed in with that stew meat. I just, again, diced everything up. And what I'm going to do is just sprinkle some of this in. You want to make sure you don't breathe any of this stuff in. All right, we need that nice little flavor nugget of fat on a ribeye. So let's have some fat here that I've reserved. Right now we're just going to fill everything in here. All right, it's looking good. It's not really looking good, it's looking weird. So what I'm going to do is pull up this cling wrap. All right, and here we are. vacuum sealed. What I'm going to do now is place this in the fridge overnight, and tomorrow I'll slice this and hopefully it'll look like some ribeyes, but in any case, despicable stuff. I'll see you in a bit. All right, we are back. Now let's see what we've created. All right, well, as you can see, we've got, kind of a bumpy texture here. We'll be trimming that off after we steak it. The thing that's kind of wild is there are some areas here that look totally fused, like the meat almost melted into each other, which is crazy. And there's some of those air bubbles that I've seen before in some of the sandwiches that are sold. So what I'm going to do now is just steak this out, and then again we're going to start doing some trimming and hopefully get these things to look like steaks. Now that looks like the cross section of a ribeye. All right, and here is a finished trim steak. This is actually going to be the one that I cook up and eat. I think it looks pretty convincing. I mean, it has that nice little nugget of fat there that is a ribeye. There are a few little kind of holes in it, and I think that's just, I've never done this before. I probably should have used a little bit more of that meat glue and compressed it more, but I was kind of aiming high with making ribeye anyway. Again, with the fake fillets, what they're doing is just packing the meat into a ring mold and then refrigerating it overnight, and voila. So we're going to cook this up, and one of the concerns about cooking up a fake steak like this is there's a lot of meat that used to be on the outside that is now on the inside, which means there's bacteria inside of this piece of meat. So I like my meat medium rare. If I was to cook this medium rare, chances are I'm going to be eating a lot of bacteria that may make me sick. So what I'm going to do is cook this sous vide in my the circulator right back here. And normally I would cook it at 125. I'm going to cook it at 130, but it's going to cook so long, even at that low temperature, that it will pasteurize this meat. And I'm going to cook it for 90 minutes that way. Then we're going to take it outside and sear it off. So I will see you outside at the grill. Okay, so the steak has been sous vide, 130 degrees, 90 minutes, and we are ready to sear it off. On the little Weber here, season it with some kosher salt, some ground pepper. Let's get it on the grill. We're just going to sear it just about a minute or so. Hit it with some more salt, more pepper. All right, it's been about a minute. Let's give it a nice flip here. There you go. Wow. Looks like steak. All right, another minute has passed and we are ready to try Frankensteak. All right, so right off the bat, it smells like steak. Looks good. Again, if it was just a regular normal steak, I would have cooked it a little bit rarer than this, but I was kind of taking it safe here. Let's give it a try. Yeah, I mean, if I didn't know any better, I'm thinking it's steak. It's really actually very good. Getting that really, beefy brisket flavor. It's nice. Now again, my main motivation for making this video is to simply shed some light on some deception that's going on out there. I know there are legitimate uses for this product. I mean, it's used in, caseless hot dogs, caseless sausages, those funky shaped chicken things, and, welding bacon onto a nice fillet. But where I really have a problem is when a restaurant or, a dining hall is trying to pass off a bunch of scraps welded together as real steak. So if it seems like you're getting too good of a deal, just ask. Ask, is this processed or formed meat? Hopefully they'll tell you the truth. But anyway, guys, know what you're eating. Thanks for stopping by. Cheers.